Okay, I'm on. I see my face. Ew, I'm trying to put this thing down. It doesn't want to go. Just a little bit. Alrighty. Pokemon says, hi. Wow, that was fast. And Teresa says, am I first? Apparently not. Maybe you guys were tied. I don't know. But there we go. Ian says, hello and welcome to you all. Teresa says, guess not. Sad face. Robert says, hello all. Hi, Robert. Ma Arge says, hello. Hello. Ma. Pokemon says, I'm Watch. Yes, you are. Robert says, Siofra, do you use crystals to cure a certain part of the body, like a pointy specimen round one, and apply directly? Do you also use sound? I use selenite a lot, and I use that directly on my skin. If there's an inflammation, also use it on my aura and my energy field and on my chakras to help balance things, and use it on my other stones in order to charge them up, and my wands, etc. It's a good overall stone for that. And I use various other stones at other times that just I'm inspired to use for one reason or another. So I'm not working on a specific ailment, although I just finished making this week. It's a piece of Amazonite and was reading up on its properties just before the show. And apparently it might help with my spasms because I have a spasm disorder. Carla says, hi, Siofra and Ian. How was your week? Holy wow, what fun. Yeah, week was pretty good. I think we had some sleep issues, each one of us on a different night, so that was nice. I woke up with like a mucus plug in my throat one morning at 3 a.m., and by the time I was finished getting it out, I was awake. But I slept okay last night. So, Pokemon says, hearts, hands. Robert says, I used a carnelian on my flesh body parts and seemed to work slowly but sure. Good. I think it's like with everything else, different people are going to respond to stones in different ways. I'm pretty responsive to things that go in my body and on my body. So, Rowan says, hello, everyone. Hi, Rowan. Teresa says, the pendant matches perfectly with your outfit. Thank you. I was quite pleased with this one because I just sort of came up with this design on my own after practicing other designs that I found on YouTube. So, and right now I'm working. I picked up some more of those old jade leaves, and I'm figuring out a new way to make the Tree of Life pendant with the leaf behind it. So I just came up with a new approach to do that because I tried two other approaches I didn't like. So, it's fun. Robert says, so it's a pyramid shaped specimen. I use one with a point tip. No, my selenite is I have a smooth one that's about that long that you can use like as a massage tool. And then I have a couple of raw ones that are like long like that. I don't know that it's easy to get selenite in a pyramid shape because of its tendency to fracture and its softness, but I'm sure they probably have found a way, but no, it's not what I'm using. Rowan says, thank you for the bergamot discussion last week. I've got permission from my doctor to start it. Awesome. That's fantastic. My doctor was certainly impressed with the whole thing. Robert says, Siofra, why sage is so efficient? Why sage? It's been used for thousands of years to help cleanse things, so it knows its job and it knows what it's doing. It helps to banish negative energy. You just have to remember if you're going to use sage, you need to also bring in positive energy when you're done cleaning a space because you don't want it to be empty of all energy. So, one of the things a lot of times people end up having to sage a lot, and one of the reasons they have to sage a lot is because they only sage, and then something happens and the negative energy has a nice vacuum in which to get sucked straight back in. So it works temporarily for those people that do it that way, but it has to be done on a pretty regular basis, otherwise they end up with the negative energy right back. That's why I follow that up with um, doing the stuff to bring in the positive energy. Teresa says, I'm having trouble finding the citrus bergamot supplement. Where did you get yours and what brand? I'd have to look up what brand I got, but right now I'm doing a combination with it's got the bergamot, the cinnamon, and the berberine in it. So I'm doing all three in one, which is actually the bergamot is stronger in that one combination supplement than the individuals. So I don't have access to that. It's in my house. I can't answer that question. Robert says, yes, but why sage and only sage and not another? Why? What does sage have that others don't? I don't think sage has things that others don't. It's just one of many things that you can use.
It does. Okay, I'm going to put this in generalities. So, in general, sage can represent all the elements because sage is specifically related to the earth. Okay, and the earth can represent all elements. So if you burn sage to clear something, you can also use other earth elements, and some of the Native Americans around this area used angelica to burn it because of its odor and its clearing properties. It's mostly because of the properties of the sage naturally help to clear things out. Any of the earth element related plants would have the same kind of effect, but just like different drugs have different effects, the same thing. Some plants are better for cleaning, and it's more intrinsic to its elemental properties and things like that.
So
If that helps.
Margay says, do you use camphor? I'm not. Ian does sometimes put it in formulas for
I use it
skin
as a good
stuff.
Yeah, it's a good cooling water. Definitely water on camphor, that cooling, especially if you use camphor essential oil. You can easily get it too strong, and then the cooling becomes enough to become an irritant. But it's a very nice thing. I don't burn it. I know that there are camphor lamps and things.
Ron says, hello to you all and many blessings. Hi, Ron. Teresa says, I looked for the blend as well, but couldn't find it. I got mine on Amazon, and it came back, the one I liked. So, Robert says, selenite on skin, how many minutes? Depends on how I'm feeling. If it's for an inflammation, I rub it over the inflamed site and pull it down the lymphatic system to help it leave my body. If it's for, like, I don't know, clearing or activating my third eye or throat chakra or my heart center, I leave it on until I feel I don't need it or I've had enough. So I don't have like a specific time. Ron says, neat necklace, a wire wrap? Yes, and I made it. I'm very happy with it. Virgo Flower says, greetings. Hi, Virgo. Carla says, right on, Ian. That's how I was taught. It represents all elements in spirit. Robert says, hello, Rowan.
Yeah, it's kind of the same reason you can use the banishing pentagram of earth to banish anything. You can get specific with the banishing of air, banishing of water, something like that. But in general, you can just, and commonly Wiccans, witches, I should say, commonly just use the earth banishing pentagram to banish everything, and that's okay.
Well, yeah, that's sort of how I got started with that.
Yeah.
Starhawk's thing about the ghost proofing was using the vanishing earth pentagram.
Yeah, so you can use the other ones if you want to get more specific and more direct and more detailed in your approach, but you can always just use the old earth one for the same reason. Earth is composed of all the elements, so there you go.
Yeah.
Earthiness. Yeah.
And for people who are allergic to smoke products and stuff like that, you can always use sage and stick it in an alcohol decoction thing. And I did that with the plants that were in my garden. So I did that with my rosemary, my lavender, and my sage that I grew, and put it in a large container and poured vodka or Everclear or something like that on it and just left it for many months to let it absorb.
Yeah, for that, if you want to get the smell in particular, you should probably use the highest alcohol content you can and less water. If you use vodka or something, it works, but you still got the potato odor left in the vodka.
So Ron says, heard of gemstones such as jade rollers? Well, I've seen, as a massage tool that they can make. Robert says, does the 7-pointed heptagram can be used for banishing? I have this geometric jewel I can wear around my neck.
Well, the number seven doesn't really relate to banishing. Seven is more like love and Venus, and you might use number seven to make a love charm, but I don't think I'd try using it for banishing.
No, I'd use a pentagram or something.
However, there's just for FYI, there is a Venus pentagram in the Solomon stuff that is for protection, and it's something on the order of place a signet on my arm, on my heart, for love is as strong as death, and it's a pentagram on a copper piece. So it is a protection. There's the idea of protection by divine love also.
Interesting.
But not really for banishing.
Carla says, not nodding head like you all can see me. Tom Willett says, hey guys. Hi, Tom. Teresa says, I had an amusing experience the other day. I was in an altered state when a gnome appeared. I thought I might have annoyed him, but he was attracted to my meditative state. He gave me a quizzical look and asked if I had a husband. I said no, I prefer not to have one. Then he went away. All right. Brianna says, hey everyone. Hi, Brianna. So I wanted to ask Teresa, I'm assuming that the fire didn't get to your property since I haven't seen you post anything about it. So that means your place is safe, right? But they could make those gemstone rollers out of a lot of stuff. Any stone like lapis and jade and stuff like that. Teresa says, I am safe from fire. Yes, they contained it. I heard a bunch of the trucks on the scene. A bunch of fire trucks on the scene. Well, I'm glad because fire can be very excited about consumption of everything in its path. Ron says, so glad I caught the chat early this time. For a while, I'll just listen and learn and enjoy. Well, awesome. We're so glad that you're here. And anytime you have a question, please feel free. Robert says, Siofra, any money ritual you know that would like to share? Nope, I don't. I don't do those. It's just one of those things. Probably my mother's influence or something like that from childhood. Teresa says, everything but my house would have gone up in flames.
Yeah,
Carla
no,
says, okay, it's working. I commented and it said internal error. Robert says, I need moolah. Well, good for you. Find something that makes money and pursue it. I think we all could use moolah.
well, a lot of people do the candle spells and anoint a green candle for money and then let it burn down to the bottom or something like that. There's lots of those things are out there. Just do a little Google search for those kind of spells.
Yeah, I have a Lakshmi statue because I looked into goddesses of fortune and decided that Fortuna was way too fickle for my taste, and I wanted to have, if I was going to have a deity that was working on luck and prosperity and so forth, I wanted to have one that was more contained or less volatile than Fortuna, because she's kind of, depending on a whim, give it and then take it all away. So, yeah. So, things are moving along in the right direction slowly but surely. That's kind of the way I see things. Teresa says, Robert, do some research on making money bowls and keep it by your front door. Put things in to attract money, especially money. Don't be chintzy, though. Robert says, thanks, Teresa. There's certainly plenty of things you can Google. Carla says, I have a prosperity circuit, not for riches, but to always have enough. Yep. And, we were talking about how uh, amazing it was that we had the universe give us the assistance to help us repair our sewer line, and that it was a direct link to a person that I had helped. Because usually the universe gives me help all the time, is always trying to open up doors and allowing me to figure out which way I want to go. But this was an example of a person I helped myself coming to help us. And so it was kind of nice to know that that energy is out there, and sometimes it can be direct. I generally speaking don't expect a direct. I really like Moida's saying, a gift not freely given is not a gift at all. And that's one of the things I try to follow as far as it goes, because if you give someone something with expectations of what you're going to get in return, or how they're going to use it, or how they're going to receive it, or anything like that, then you've got your ego involved in the equation, and then you're going to be disappointed, potentially, undoubtedly, especially if you have expectations and they don't fulfill them. But if you give a gift to someone without any strings attached and with no expectations of something in return, then it can go out into the universe and it adds to your good karma coming back to you later. And it doesn't have to be tit for tat. And I've given up the idea of tit for tat many, many years ago. So it was kind of a surprise when that happened, but I certainly was quite grateful. Robert says, Teresa, did you have positive results using those at one point? Tom says, I heard an explanation for sleep paralysis, something I experience often, that the spirits that appear are of the world of form, the imaginal overlay, and when you snap out of it, it vanishes. Thoughts? Well, it's kind of like you're having a dream while you're paralyzed and your eyes are open. Ian experienced that once when he was driving, and he kept his eyes open because he was really trying hard not to let them fall.
Yeah, I was trying not to fall asleep while I was driving. It was awful.
And then he did, and started dreaming while he was driving.
With my eyes open.
So
I fell asleep with my eyes open while I was driving, and I could see the dream superimposed on the car in front of me. And that scared the heck out of me, and I got off the road right away.
Thank goodness. At that point, he wasn't sleeping very well at night because he's got, he had chronic insomnia for so long, ever since I met you, actually.
Yeah.
Until we finally got a doctor who says, oh, I can help with that, and then gave him the medication that works really well. And he found out last night that he still needs it because he forgot to take it and then was awake.
Forgot to take it for one day. That's all it takes.
Yep.
It's like, man,
his brain is wired
sleep
that way, so, yep. Margay says, that's a perfect saying.
So did Teresa C's, do you have Teresa C's message? Because it held it. It says, I watched another of your old live videos yesterday. This one was about the time when Ian broke the fall of a very fat woman and might have saved her life.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. That didn't come through.
Okay. I told it to release it. I don't know why it held it. I guess the word fat.
Well, yes, and we were talking about that exact instance, too,
Yep.
during the same conversation. Because that day when he went out, he says he wanted the universe to tell him what it needed.
Yep.
And he wanted to be helpful. And what he did was he helped to keep a woman from falling down and breaking her neck. But it was a big shock to his entire system because it came
I didn't
so
see
out
her
of the
coming.
blue.
It came from behind, and she
Very large.
Yes, she ran into me with like a battering ram.
Yeah, she just started falling. I could
Kind of
see
smashed me against the wall.
Yep. And Ian was rather expletive deleted.
I wasn't. I was more because
Startled.
of surprise, but hurt my wrist a little bit, but not too bad.
Yeah. And yes, Margay, I agree. It's a perfect saying, and something one of the things that she has said when I was channeling that really hit home, and just like I thought, this is important. So, Robert says, Siofra, what is the best source to gather information about dream interpretations? Your own subconscious and your life. Everyone's dream symbols are going to be different. I don't recommend any of the books that say look up the symbol and it'll tell you what it means, because we all have very different lives and different interpretations of things.
I agree.
So,
I think they're all
keeping a
pretty
dream journal
individual.
so that you know what your dreams are, and keeping a diary that sort of goes along with it so you can figure out what those symbols
Yeah.
are to you,
Yeah,
and
more
then
like
you
what
can
they mean
interpret
to,
the dream.
what they mean to you. Yeah.
And I recommend an old book called The Dream Game by Anne Faraday. She goes through the whole process of doing that, and it made perfect sense to me and still does. I did a bunch of dream workshops using her processes and techniques and so forth, and they really can work. So it's a way of actually working directly with your own dream symbols and telling the dream in the first person, in the present state, in the present form, from the perspective of the different characters in the dream, as one of the techniques. And there's sometimes more than one level to a dream. It can represent something real that's going on in your life. It can represent a past life, or it can represent an intuition or a precognitive kind of event. I mean, there are a lot of different ways, because dreams are with symbols, and symbols can be interpreted in so many different ways. So, for example, my former partner, our relationship was always a car to him. So if he had to fix the car, he felt there was something broken with us, and he wanted to fix our relationship, which was not necessarily something I was into at the time, but that was his dream. Um, and for me, storms are often warning dreams that tell me that something tumultuous is going to happen, that's coming on the horizon. And I can tell by how close or how far away the event is, tornadoes in particular, exactly how big the event will be and how much it will affect me directly. So, but I've had past life experiences in dreams more than once, and I've communicated with spirits. In the beginning, especially, Moya showed up in my dreams a lot, and we would have long conversations as we were working through my own shadow stuff and trying to get things rearranged in my head and learn a little bit of measure of control and so forth. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that can happen with dreams. And it's interesting. And the thing to remember, too, is that dreams aren't really, if a dream is a nightmare, if it's trying to scare you, generally that means that the dream has been trying to give you, the dream world has been trying to give you some kind of a message, and you're not paying attention. You're not listening, you're not hearing the message, and it's trying to warn you about something. And the less you listen, the more insane the dreams become, because it's literally trying to hit you over the head with a brick and say, hey, look out, this is coming. You need to deal with it. So, knowing, if you know that nightmares aren't actually like a bad thing, if you get one, then that's a real warning sign. That's an alert system that your subconscious has to say, really need to be paying attention. So, yeah. And of course, dreaming is your best way. Robert says, hello, Beth. Much salutations. Beth says, hi, everyone. And Beth says, hi, Robert. Carla says, in agreement. Margay says, yikes. Beth says, oh gosh, that's scary. Robert says, I once did money rituals that involved rice and silver coins. Results equal none. You have to follow up with real life things. You can do all the money spells in the world that you want to, but if you don't apply for a job, you're generally not going to get one.
True. Honestly, though, I've never had any results with money spells either. I've done a bunch of different ones.
But then I've had results by finding sources of money and help that we need in unusual and weird ways by paying attention.
Well, yeah, you're good at it.
Well, that's how it works for me. It's like finding grant money or a program or whatever. Yeah, so there's other sources of quote unquote income out there that isn't just money in your bank account. And it can be like getting our roofs done, which we didn't have to pay for, getting our tree taken out that was in danger of falling over, not having to pay for that, getting the sewer fixed and only having to pay for the parts. I mean, there's like,
Yeah, wholesale
All-
parts, basically.
yeah, yeah, and we even got it in a wholesale because we were with a contractor. And, so there are lots of ways of getting. I once had someone sell me a car for $50 that they had parked in their garage. That thing ran for like 4 years without a problem. was one of the best cars I ever had because of the kindness of the people who just had this vehicle. They had no one to give it to. It was just sitting there collecting rust and dirt and whatever, needed a new battery and a couple of tires or something like that. And they knew that I was in need, and they heard about me from a friend, and then voila, I got the car. So, it's being actively involved in the universe and all the things that are going on. I think people are more disconnected from it now because of the internet and social media and the way communication is happening. So few people are like doing just direct communication so much anymore. But it's a method, and it can work in your benefit. Okay, so let's see. Brianna says, I'm talking to a new man friend. We hit it off, but he's in another state. He's a friend's relative who adores him and thought I'd make a good couple with him since we're both sweet, sensitive people. I'm trying not to get my hopes up, but maybe we can start off as friends. Being friends with the person that you end up with is really important. I consider Ian my best friend. So I say yay to that. Tom says, so what's the difference between entity spirits and the spirits of the psyche experienced in dreams or dream paralysis? Okay, so first off, an actual entity that's outside of yourself has independent reality, and it continues to exist whether you know it's there or not. Dream states, the things that you encounter just in dreams, are only there while you're dreaming, so they only exist during that state when your psyche's in that state. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you meet an actual external being, it's like when you meet a person. It just happens to be a person that generally doesn't have a physical body, and they have a contained energy that is just real, and it's there.
Well,
and when it happens, you know it.
I like to describe it like a little bit of it feels to me like a little bit of a shock. Like there's a little shock there, like this is definitely a consciousness outside myself. I can always feel the difference, well, not always, but I mean, when it has happened, that's how it seemed. Is that it's a slight shock because it's outside of you, and also can, you know, it can give you information you didn't have before that you did not have in your conscious mind at all. And then I've been given information and looked it up to find it to be true. A few times when I had like plants talk to me and things like that.
Yeah. So Brianna says, I had a fat lady fall on me once at a church and it messed up my knee for a few years. I'm sorry. Teresa says, Freud's The Interpretation of Dreams is fascinating and has some good information. I don't like Freud. I find his stuff not that useful, considering the fact that he knew child molestation was happening while he was alive and he ignored it and came up with an entire rationalization to get around it and came up with the whole Oedipus complex to explain it because it couldn't have actually been real, so it must be projection. But that's me. I mean, there's always good ideas coming from other people, and the things that you read about and the things that you do during the day is going to influence your dreams. So if you read a dream interpretation book, no matter who wrote it, you may adopt some of their interpretations, some of their symbolism and stuff in your dreams. So remember that. Robert says, agreed. Carl Jung also. Virgo says, whoops, I went too far. Virgo Flower says, oops, nope, I'm still too far. I went and flipped. There we are. For me, dreams are part of a physiological process as well as a spiritual one, which is why the illusions are symbolic.
For me too.
Yeah. And when I was with David, he used Carl Jung's interpretation of dreams a lot, and I did a lot of dream work with him. And not everything has cosmic significance. That's the conclusion I came to after being harassed and harangued and having to do it every day.
Sometimes things are just an accident, or.
Sometimes you stub your toe because you weren't looking down and you didn't turn on the light when you got up to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, some things might have cosmic significance, but it's easy to overdo that one.
Yep. Carla says, I'm curious about white magic hexes versus black magic hexes. What? I have never heard this. I was asking about humiliation rituals and what magical operation requires it. I've never heard of white magic hexes. I mean, white and
Well,
black is kind of a weird term to me anyway.
yeah,
A
you
hex
know,
is a hex is a hex. I don't
well,
care.
and magic is magic. The only difference between white magic and black magic is that black magic is used for bad purposes, and that's the term we give it. It's all the same magic, really, at the bottom of it all. It's all the same rules, the same laws have to be followed. The difference between white and black magic is just if you're trying to harm people or things, use black magic.
Or it's a matter of personal
You know,
interpretation. You
well,
might
yeah,
think
I
that what you're
mean,
doing is white because you're helping a certain group of people by destroying another group of people, but if you're the group of people that's being destroyed, they would consider that black magic. So,
yeah. So it's all kind of
individual
yeah. I mean, well,
perspective.
it all depends. I mean, uh, I visited one of the demonic beings once of Solomon's stuff for a positive purpose to protect us from someone who happened to be worshiping that demon. So I mean, it all depends on what you're doing with it. Whether it's white or black magic is all in how you use it. Like you can use a sharp knife to cut up a loaf of bread, or you can use it to go out and kill somebody. It's just a tool.
Exactly. So Virgo says storms are strongly linked to change. Teeth are associated with intrigue and fights. Snakes and spirits, serpents with betrayal, cats with luck, fishes with fortune, and barbecues with death and funerals. Yeah, those don't actually work for me at all. Uh, Storms are definitely, for me, not just change, but danger. The teeth usually means that I'm worried about something. Snakes and serpents usually represent wisdom and knowledge that's hidden, and the Kundalini for me. Cats, I just love cats and I think they're wonderful, and I have them sometimes in my dreams and sometimes I don't. And barbecues I never dream about. So again, this is a good example of your own particular symbolism is specific to you, the stuff that you read, the stuff that you absorb, the things that you believe, your interpretation and of words and so forth and everything else involved. Just like your body is different, people's likes and dislikes as far as their food intake is concerned, what they can and cannot take as far as medication or so forth, all of that stuff is up to us. It's an individual experience. And these are not like written rules, universal truths, or anything like that. It says more to what your belief systems are and what you've been exposed to and what you've internalized from that than it has to do with any kind of universal meaning about dreams. So Norse Code says, hi Siofra, Ian in chat. Hi Norse Code. Beth says, I had a dangerous dream last night. My ex-husband was in it. I almost fell into a dam. Ooh. No drowning, please. Carl says, someone said black magic can require humiliation rituals, but you can get creative with white magic hexes. I'm not familiar with hexes either way. Hexes are usually considered negative, as far as I know, as far as word definitions are concerned. But like I said, again, it's going to really depend upon your own personal belief systems and what kind of system you're following and what your interpretations of words are.
Yep. Now, certainly not one of the things we study on because we're not about doing hexes and things.
Teresa says, when I was a kid around 9 or 10, I had a dream about a three-headed dog in my neighbor's garage, and my neighbor was doing some pounding of metal on an anvil, and there was fire. Hellish. But I had never heard of cherubus, so must be in the collective unconscious or something. No doubt about it. Robert says, Siofra, it's supposed to be a shared reality. We do efforts, but the universe must also do its job. The universe responds to you as an individual as well as a collective. The universe is always doing its job. It's us who fall down on the job, who don't understand or don't interpret things correctly or don't make the effort in order to be able to understand and hear and listen to the universe. We're always giving the universe information, and the universe responds in kind. So if we haven't cleared our own selves out, and we don't know who we are and what we want, that's the information we're giving to the universe, and the universe has to respond with that piece of information. So you want the universe to treat you differently or react differently, you change yourself, and then you change your actions, and then the universe gets the message, and it slowly changes your result. And that's how it works. We are the ones who are in charge of that. The universe is doing its job all the time. So Teresa says apparently her neighbor was an a-hole. Rowan says, Robert, you would probably do better with a mantra. I have a personal mantra for when I feel need of any type. Robert says, okay, I will do one, Rowan. Thanks. Ron says, back with my coffee and ginger snaps, sharing the yum vibes with you all. Thank you. Ian likes the ginger snaps.
Yes, I do.
I'm not so fond of them. They're a little bit too hot for me, although I like a little bit of ginger, not quite that much.
I love gingers.
Yep. Norse Code says, interesting you're mentioning home issues. I'm dealing with tree roots in my sewer line in front. That's what we had.
Yep.
Trees that need cut in my backyard, and my deck is sinking into the ground on one side. Ooh, I'm so sorry. It's funny. Rowan says, Robert, you got to do it constantly to train the brain. Comes subconscious. Robert says, yes, absolutely. Norse Code says, I'm not a fan of a hex. What?
So
I
I
missed
have
that.
to figure
Sorry.
out how to pay for all this, and it's very necessary.
I just accidentally
Okay,
skipped
sorry.
ahead. Let me go back. All right. One of those things that happens.
Yes, well, we didn't
All right.
know we didn't know how to pay for anything either, except Siofra managed to find us the means through grants and things that were available.
So yes, North Code says I have to figure out how to pay for all of this, and it's all very necessary. And yes, that's what I did. I found programs. Now that the government's back open, I don't know if the USDA loan grant would be an option, and not all states have it, so I don't know where you live, but Oregon did. And we also had a local program, which was a state-run program that helped us with the roof in the first place. We had to apply for it, had to find it, to try to do as much research as you can and talk to people and find out what programs are available, because a lot of times they don't advertise these things. You have to kind of search them out. So you can talk to social services. They might be able to give you some hints as to where to look to find the information you're looking for. I don't know. And North Code says, and I'm so glad you're talking about dreams and nightmares, and yum at Ron. Brianna says, I can physically feel the static from a spirit's energy sometimes. Barbara says, Siofra, is this true that for empaths, energy work is different than those who are not, like different rules, etc.? No, I don't think so. I think you have to be more careful of your own energy if you're an empath, and you need to have control over your energy, because there's a good chance if you don't know what you're doing, you can make yourself sick by absorbing someone else's illness and their energy and so forth, because illness happens from a lack of, I don't know what's the right word, the right relationship or whatever with their own universe thing. I mean, when I'm doing an energy healing on somebody in person, one of the things I'm doing is trying to give the body a better template for health, and sometimes the person can get in the way of that. But yeah, you have to know what you're doing for sure. I think the first time I did it, I made myself sick. All my energy was drained out because I put my energy into the person I was working on, and then in the middle of it, she stood up and walked away because she felt better. So that taught me that in energy work, you have to make sure you get all of your energy back before the person leaves. So I made a rule about that. If I'm working on someone, I'm the one who decides when contact is over. So I think that, yeah, I don't know exactly what else to say about that. Robert says Ginger Snaps equals a werewolf movie. Beth says, I didn't like him at all. Creepy vibes. Tom says, another follow-up question. So when evoking a spirit, is that a projection of the mind, or is it calling forth an actual entity in a literal sense?
Well, it depends on how you do it and what your attitude is. First, let me state that there are beings that are definitely external to your mind and your system, and those can be evoked, okay? However, a number of the people doing evocations do not really have the technical qualifications to be doing actual proper evocations, so what they end up doing is stirring as much energy and enthusiasm as possible up, and in the attempt to do an evocation, a lot of them create their own spirit entity or being that then they can use. It's like making a servitor that can then go and do what you want, and they can be fooled and think they have evoked the being when actually they've just created their own. So a proper evocation is dealing with an actual being external to you. It's not part of your mind. It can do things on its own, and it should be treated as a external being. So it can potentially be dangerous in the same way. The problem with a lot of the people who believe they're doing an evocation and they're actually just calling up part of their own mind and evoking that and using it. The danger there, of course, is they might get an actual evocation and get a hold of the actual being, and then they're going to have some problems. So, and because of the inability to get, in my opinion, a lot of Westerners have this problem because of the inability to get a evocation to visible appearance. It has become a belief in a lot of the Western Hermetic societies and things, in my opinion, the OTO and the Golden Dawn and them are so convinced it's their own stuff they're dealing with that they can't get an actual evocation at this point because their whole worldview is it's all from inside of them and you're mastering your demons. And while there is a little bit of something to that that would take a whole lot more of explanation, generally the people are just fooling themselves, in my opinion.
And that's the thing too, is like when you're asking the question about external entities and how can you tell versus like a thought form or a projection or something like that, you got to know yourself well enough to be able to tell the difference between them. And that whole way of thinking that everything you see is just a reflection of yourself and is part of your own subconscious
It
falls
makes
apart
it,
rather easily if you start
well,
thinking about it.
yes, it does, and it makes it really easy to say, well, I'm going to just call up this, I'm just going to use this negative being from the Guetta because it's only part of my own psyche and subconscious, right? So I can call up any negative being of the Guetta I want and just have it do this and that and whatever without any potential consequences, and that's in my opinion, mistaken and dangerous attitude.
Well, it's like delusional.
Yeah.
It leads to a lot of delusional thinking and so forth. But if you think about whenever you're doing anything or meeting anyone, whether it's an external being or a thought form or a projection or what have you, the thing to keep in mind is, are you comfortable with the energy? Is it something positive that's going to be helpful to you? Why are you doing it? Why are you interested in contacting this particular being or not? And just think about realize that a real spirit can lie to you. So if you encounter something that wants you to do something that is against your nature, you don't do it and you dismiss that particular being and tell them to go away. If a being refuses to acknowledge that you are separate and won't give you its name or its purpose or so forth, then it's probably a thought form or it's a spirit you shouldn't have anything to do with. So you got to use some common sense when it comes to it. And the idea that everything in the universe is a projection of ours just seems completely and totally inane to me.
Yeah. Hardin recommends anybody starting to practice evocation should have very good clairvoyance to start with. Otherwise, you just run the risk of fooling yourself, and I agree with that.
Robert says hundreds of dollars. Carla says, I call it filler dreams. Norse Code says, sometimes in a dream when I'm looking desperately for a toilet, it's because I need to get up and pee.
Yeah,
That's
me
one
too.
we have.
Yep.
I think almost everyone on the planet has had that one because your body is trying to wake you up so you don't go in the bed. K-Rock says, hello everyone. I finally made it here on the live stream. Congratulations, K-Rock. Welcome. That says, yes, I thought it when you did, Siofra, a hex is a hex. Margay says, how did the demon receive you?
Well, that's a good question, and I can kind of answer that. First off, I noticed that the description in the books was wrong. This particular one is supposed to have really bad breath that's dangerous, and you have to watch out for it. What he actually has is a wind surrounding him that whirls in a like a whirlwind around him, filled with chunks of like rock and stone whirling around him very rapidly, and that's obviously the danger that you're supposed to look out for if you try evoking this thing. especially if you're doing it in an open space in nature where there's rocks and things that can get thrown around. But so because of the nature of this being, two things. Number one, I couldn't see the being behind this tornado of flying debris. Okay. Secondly, the being acknowledged when I asked it if it was a being I was looking for by flashing its sigil up above the storm so I could see it. Like, yes, that's me. And then I talked to it. I'm not going to go into any more details in this, but I talked to it about what I needed to. And an interesting thing that happens when you talk to a being like this, that's one of the more advanced ones and not a real basic being, he said like one word to me, but that one word in itself was worth several paragraphs of information. So it was able to give me a lot of information with very little speech, and it was transmitted to me somehow, more like telepathy, that kind of thing. So, and then after that, I did that, and then I just left peacefully. This was just basically to prevent a person who we knew was worshiping that demon from ever darkening our doorstep again.
And he never did.
And he never did.
Although he sent me some very strange text messages.
So you have to watch out if you got people who are dealing with demons like that. But yeah, so one thing is the big amount of information, and also when it happened, along with all that information, the seal of the demon was explained to me very explicitly and directly through information, not through words, exactly how that functions. And yeah, that's about all I can go into on that. But describe the seal to me very completely. So it seems to have been
and that's an example of an external energy.
And I had some higher planes help in working with doing that too, because I wasn't really up to doing that myself at the time. So I had some help and assistance, not on the physical plane. I hope that didn't take too long. Still, we're getting way behind on our...
Hey, that's okay. Everybody will have to wait. Robert says, Beth Hex or Hex Beth the X. Rowan says, power is power. It depends on how it's used. Wield it with wisdom. Beth says, you don't need a hex if their intentions are harm. You shield up and return to sender. That's how I work.
Yep.
It's like I figure if they're sending me negative energy or harmful energy, it's their problem. They have to deal with it, and I don't have to deal with it at all. And so I don't. And I let them deal with themselves, and usually then they think I'm attacking them for some reason, which I find ironic and hysterically funny.
Well, if it's their own energies,
Because I'm not doing anything but saying, back, go away.
I have no problem with sending somebody's nasty energy back to them if they send it to me.
Norse Code says, I'm not a fan of a hex. I feel like that can come back to bite you. I just send any shit thing people do to you right back to them. They can have their own energy back. Yeah. Yes, return to sender it, Beth. Beth says, Robert, I thought it when she first spoke it. Norse Code hearts. Brianna says, what a white magic... Whoops, did that again. We are. Boy.
Would a white magic...
I got it.
Okay.
Would a white magic hex be if someone got attacked by a swarm of squirrels? I don't know.
Maybe a swarm of bunnies. How about that?
North Nord says, Siofra and Ian coming through with the gems. I'm grateful for you guys. Siofra's Magic Alcove. Thank you. Carla says, or the fleas of a camel and arms not long enough to itch. Well, isn't the may you live in interesting times the best curse ever? And Teresa says, I'm still dealing with goat fencing. Added some more. I need 2 more fence posts and maybe it will hold. North Coast says, this is my mother's house. I inherited it. I'm in the U.S. I'll check out some grants. Thank you, Ian and Siofra. I'll also check with social services. I appreciate you guys. Yeah, because, they may have, like I said, depending on what state you're in and what services are available. Carla says, seriously, though, those were the answers I got to my question of what magical operation required humiliation rituals. I know no more now than I do when I asked.
Well, no, neither do we. And
I'm not in favor of humiliating myself. So there, I think it's nice. It's good to be humble, but humiliation, nah. That's not okay. If something wants me to humiliate myself, they can go take whatever it is that they're trying to do and go somewhere else with it, because I won't cooperate.
Yeah, no, I certainly haven't made it. I know a few things about black magic just from stuff I've run across, but we certainly haven't made a study of it and don't plan on it.
Ron says, Ian, I'm enjoying the next ginger snap just for you. I hope it helps your cough.
Thanks.
And Rihanna says, Carla, haha. And Robert says, I don't think the universe did its job for everyone because I happen to know I never wanted to be here. No, at some point you wanted to be here. You just don't remember. That's the way it works. And I remember that too, thinking that I was here and being tortured and when could I go home. This is where we're supposed to be, and we just have to do and deal with what we have in front of us and accept it and embrace it, and then we can move through it. It's like ignoring or denying things or trying to fight against the reality that you're in never really gets you anywhere. It just sets up a lot of conflict. And just because you don't remember agreeing to come doesn't mean you didn't. Brianna says, Beth, haha. Carlos says, Teresa, have you ever asked your land spirit to help control the goats along with all the fence work you do? Teresa says, Carla, I think the land spirit works for the goats. Yeah, I think the goats are on their own when it comes to that. Teresa says, talking about animals, I think I saw a moose strolling on the other side of my fence this morning. Cool. Brianna says his name is Daniel Neems, and he has the photos on his Facebook. Margay says, thanks, Ian. Very interesting. Robert says, lots of messages tonight. Ha ha. Yeah, no kidding. Tom says, thanks. Oops. Thanks for your answers. I tend to have cognitive dissonance when it comes to making heads or tails with right view and false view. I think all of us have that sometimes. Robert says, physical plane. I'll just take a small airplane.
Yep.
Virgo says, it's important to remember that we are also spirits, souls inside a body. Yeah, that's the thing that always interests me when people are afraid of ghosts. And I'm like, you do realize that you are just a ghost that happens to have a body right now? But hey, Robert says, tonight I will destroy all layers of parasitic astral from this hijacked cosmos hologram. Brianna says, I always have a cloud of beings, mostly aliens and fairies and angels around me. I just play with them. Robert says, Siofra, I had a dream and I have a new spiritual guide, a cat dragon. It was so beautiful to see. Well, that sounds like fun. Brianna says, the Monty Python bunnies would be black magic.
Well, that's true. But I know where they got that from because I'll tell you, the bunny is silent. He's absolutely silent. You'll not know he's there. And he jumps up on your lap and he can't see from the floor if you've got anything on your lap. He lands up in the middle of it. So out of the blue, you have a bunny. It's like, woof.
And here it comes.
And it's frightening because he's so quiet. And you look over and you actually see him flying through the air. It's like, wow, it's coming at you. Boom. He lands on the lap. It's so adorable. But
it was pretty funny when he landed on the cat.
Yes, but I get that. Since you don't know what's up there, yes, twice he's jumped on the cat when the cat was on my lap because he didn't know the cat was up there.
K-Rock says, for Siofra and those of you who are able to communicate with the Fae, do you hear them as an actual audible voice or is it telepathic communication? Usually for me it's telepathic communication. But I do hear music. I smell them. They have wonderful smells. When I go into my room to go to bed and my room is just filled with this marvelous fragrance, or sometime in the middle of the night it just starts, I know that they're around. So apparently I have the clairvoyance of smell. Aliens, clairaliens, which is new. I didn't know I had that. Ian has had that all along. That was one of his superpowers, is smelling energy off of people. And there was one person in town, whenever we were around him, he's like, oh my God, he stinks so bad. I'm like, what are you talking about? He doesn't have BO.
Yeah, smell and energy stinks sometimes.
But yeah. And I see colors and sparkles sometimes and whatnot, so. Robert says, bunny magic or black magic or dark, sinister, evil magic. Rowan says, I won't throw magical at anyone. I do the shield and return as well. Sorry, magic, autocorrect. Yeah, we know that. Robert says, intergalactic or interdimensional? I don't know. Probably interdimensional. Lifestyle Real Talk says, "Hi, new here. Just found you today. Well, welcome. We always like new people showing up." Robert says, "Yeah, but I mentioned cat dragon because I was wondering if you knew this kind of creature. Wings on each side of his body and ears and head."
I think I saw some old statues
I
down
was going to say,
abandoned
they
that they
made a
have, yeah.
statue of a cat with wings. I'm not sure it's called a cat angel or a cat dragon or whatever, but I mean, they don't have a body, right? They're not physical. They can look like anything they fancy, and they could potentially be influenced by you. And they want to appear in a form that's going to delight and make you feel comfortable if they're a positive spirit. So, I don't know. There's so many different kinds that are out there. I haven't encountered that one directly myself. Bree's laughing. Bunnies. Bugs Bunny magic.
Yep.
Tanya Raz says, "Wow, I had no clue other people also felt they didn't want to be here, be born. I remember coming out of the birth canal and being so mad I was being born. Great to have, great, I have to be a mortal being." Yeah. It took me a long time to come to an acceptance of that. I mean, when I lived up north, I was definitely going through the, when do I get to go home? And I knew what home meant. It wasn't here. And then I started getting more into doing magic and nature magic and living in nature and realizing that this is a beautiful place on the physical plane, and there's things here that are for me, and I want to embrace the beauty and the wonder, as well as have to deal, unfortunately, with the people that are part of it. That's the part I really don't like. But it works a lot better when you're in more acceptance, I think. Robert says, "Gray clear aliens?" Margay says, "It might be Ian putting flowers under the bed." No, it's not him putting flowers under the bed, but he would. He would like that.
Put them on the bed.
Put them on the bed. He used to come and put them on my car window when I was working. Beth says, "Telepathic smells, visuals. I love them so." Tanya says, "I had these perpetual dreams that my prior immortal self was being punished being a mortal human." I'm sorry. It's no fun to feel that way. Norse Code says, "I have the same thing. I get phantom smells. I can smell people, but that's biology." Pheromones, not BO. Are you sure it's not psychic? How can you tell? Tom Willett says, "Have you guys ever heard of cognitive theoretical model of the universe?" Oops, not specifically. A term I haven't come across. If that's the thinking the whole universe is you, then yes, and I disagree. Robert says, "So Siofra, if I have a dream about a bank robbing plan, does it mean I'm wicked and sinful?" Just teasing. No, it could mean that you're have a past life as a bank robber. Or you're trying to think through a complex problem and your dream is telling you you can do it. You can actually have a plan and follow through with the plan and get what you want. So it could be nothing to do with bank robbing. It could have to do with your whole life, if I was interpreting the dream for myself. Norse Code says, "I'm curious" at Tom. Robert says, "Tanya equals perpetual dreams. I had some a long time ago. They lasted for months and months." Rowan says, "Tanya, I cannot stand this society. I love the earth and nature, but society is the beast in my opinion." We're
Mine
totally
too,
in agreement.
yeah.
This is why I often say I like trees better than people. And animals too. It's like you know where they're coming from. You don't have to wonder about their ethics, their hidden agendas, their whatever lies, etc. Yeah, and I judge people by their actions, not by their words, because apparently words are cheap and people can say anything at all and not mean a single word of it, and then wonder why people don't trust them. Yeah. Norse Code says, "I'm still angry I'm a human rather than an owl or a blue whale." But you can come back as a whale. Robert says, "Me too, Rowan. I'm in Canada and it's horrible up here." Where he says, I had a terrible early life and I'm finally to the point where I'm happier and more peaceful. It took 10 years of therapy and a spontaneous kundalini. Same here. I had a terrible early life and I'm at this point pretty much recovered from it. So, I mean, I lived in a nightmare. My life was a nightmare. Everything that happened around me was a nightmare. And certainly the people I was with were extremely nightmarish and some of them evil. So I understand, and it's not fun to go through. No one would ever think it was. I don't think that we choose it when we come here. I think that that is a misunderstanding of how these things happen. Um, and you can decide to learn from it, move away from it, heal from it, and not let it control you, or you can end up in a terrible place, in a terrible state. Some of the stuff I went through, I don't know why I didn't end up in an insane asylum or committing suicide. So, some essential part of me that came in when I was born refused to give up, and I am an optimist, all evidence to the contrary. I am still an optimist. It just won't leave. It seems to be, I'm stuck with it. But it is worth it now. We've had how long together? Let's see, 91, 34 years.
Yep. And
Yep.
still want some more, so.
And it was worth it, all I went through to be able to get to here and be with Ian. So, and to be in my life now and just enjoy it. So yeah. So Jen says, hello everyone, happy Sunday. Hi Jen. Robert says, hello Jen, you're late. Bree says, I feel thankful to exist. Norse Code says, I love you for that, Brianna. Rowan says, Robert, well, there goes my dream of moving to Canada. People are everywhere, I'm sorry to say. They've littered the entire planet. Even Antarctica's got people in it. I'm sure some of them aren't nice. Brianna says, thanks. Carla says, I still haven't remembered the rest of the military museum dream, Siofra. Just that feeling of being totally comfortable and unbothered. Well, sometimes acceptance is not a bad thing. North Code says, I'm definitely not sure it's not psychic. I just tend to go left brain science first. Yeah, me too. I mean, absolutely. But I'm pretty confident that the smells in my room are not coming from a physical source because I haven't changed anything in my room and it smells different when it happens. It's like if it was there physically, I would smell it all the time. Not just sporadically. Sometimes weeks go by without a smell. Sometimes it's every day. It's like, yeah, sometimes it happens in the living room. We had that vanilla smell once in the living room. It was so strong we both smelled it. So that was pretty interesting. And we were not baking at the time, so. Robert says, oh, I get it now. I need money, and now I know what to do. Ha ha! There you go. You got a plan. Money. Get the money. Have the plan. Ben says, Siofra, have you had any new downloads about our political situation? It seems like the energies may be starting to shift, but wondered if you had any new visions or dreams. I'm seeing the beginnings of the energy shifting, but we still have a whole bunch of crap to go through. I'm sorry to say. We are not yet out of the woods. So, hold on. Keep yourself safe. Do what you can to protect yourself. Tanya says, thank you for all your input. It feels very supportive. We're glad. We like to support people. We also like to be honest. Robert says, Rowan, let's you and me choose a paradise place and move there. Let's go to Canary Island. Teresa says, I just saw some kind of white form come off your left shoulder and float down when you were talking about liking trees more than people. Well, cool. The trees like me, so they're the ones who gave me the hope that I needed and love to understand that it doesn't matter what people think of me. It's what life itself and the universe thinks of me that matters. And that's why their opinion is what I look to when I decide what actions I should be taking. Beth says, I love animals, nature. I'm slowly stepping out of society. Tom says, not about the whole universe being because of you, but it describes the universe as being sentient. Oh, yeah. God existing inside and outside the universe, reality as self-configuring and self-processing. Yeah, language. Well, I already knew that, and I did a bit of a video on it called the Unimind, I guess. And yes, the universe is conscious. It's just not conscious in the way most humans interpret it. It's not like specific to us as an individual, but more broad. And then the other parts of the universe can respond to us as. So I've experienced that in person. Norse code says myself, my mother sees her sister, my aunt, and her daughter, my cousin all have psychic dreams and hear, smell, see, sense beyond the five, but my science left brain fights this sometimes. There's nothing wrong with discernment and healthy skepticism, and that helps to keep us from falling down a path of delusion um, and insanity. Because once we start to think that we know the answers to everything and that we understand everything, and we don't, we've got this secret knowledge that everyone needs to know, and we're the only ones who figured it out, is a trap. And so, I've had so many experiences in my life that at this point, I don't question certain things because I've lived through them often enough, like the healing work that I've done, encountering human spirits and the paranormal, other kinds of spirits out in the wild, in the wilderness, and so forth. And I can tell the difference between a random thought I have and some actual communication that might be going on. And that's just with the work and with experience. So what you do is when you're having an experience, you can set aside disbelief for the time you're having the experience, and then later you can look at it critically. And I believe in science wholeheartedly. I am completely on board with the whole science thing. And I think that a lot of these things are just, maybe the psychic stuff exists in this quantum realm that they're starting to explore. Um, and we are connected in quantum reality in ways that scientists are just starting to discover. So who knows? Could just be science that they haven't figured out yet. Anyway. Virgo says, like a bird plume or feather of some kind. Robert says, me too, Beth. Let's go off grid. Rowan says, Robert, I'm not a beach person. I prefer the mountains and the forests. If you go to the right island, you can have all of them, depending on the altitude that you're in, right? You can have like the beach down below by the ocean, and then you can have the forest inland, and then you can have the mountains sticking up in the middle because it was a volcanic island. It's going to have a mountain. Norse code says a guy was murdered on one of the science spots in Antarctica. Oh my. See, I told you, they're not all nice. Robert says mountains, plenty of those in Canary Islands. It's a dry, warm weather 12 months a year. Beth says, Robert, I'm down with it. Robert says, Norse codes, not surprised. Aliens did it. For me, it's cigarettes, something my dad liked until he died 20 years ago. Smelling, yeah. I used to every so often smell stale beer because of my father. Robert says, I'd kill for a cigar. Bebby the Bard says, happy to be here again. Hi, Bebby. Robert says, smiling. Rowan says, I'm almost completely out of society in a tiny cabin on my non-working farm. I rarely leave this place unless I'm forced. I used to live up north in the bush. I loved it. It was awesome. But a lot of work in the winter especially. Robert says, yes, but some humans are aliens. And wow, Rowan, I am deeply envious. K-Rock says, nice, Rowan, you are living my dream. Beth says, I'm thankful to be part of this group. Morse code says, not saying it's aliens, but at Robert. Robert says, in which state are you, Rowan? Robert says, yo, Beth, haha. Carla says, I'll be coming to you, Rowan. Rowan says, Robert, half woods, half pasture. I'm literally in a little house on the prairie. Norse code says, yes, science is not denying psychic experiences. It's just hard to pin down, so very quantum. There's a great book called The Quantum and the Lotus. I like the title. Robert says, wow, Rowan. Beth says, it's pretty good here in the mountains. Jen says, doesn't the Canary Islands have volcanoes, though? Well, it is an island. It wouldn't have to, probably how it came to be, unless it was a continent that everything sunk around, or it rose up. No, the oceans rose, that's what happened. There's some of those. Robert says, yes, I like volcanoes, Jen. Rowan says, my ancestors are from Ireland on my birth mother's side. Dalton, Dayton. I'm going to take a DNA test. Cool. My ancestors are from the west coast of Ireland, Sligo County. Rowan says Robert, Idaho, Ohio, not Idaho, Ohio. Yeah, it's the O with the high in the middle. Robert says my ancestors are from northwestern France. Tanya says I'm an atheist, but I feel there are energies, but not controlled by a singular God. Could I still call myself an atheist, or is there a better word to describe this type of spirituality? Agnostic, maybe? I don't know. And why do we need to have labels to describe it? You have your personal experience with the universe and a belief system that you have evolved because of it, and it doesn't necessarily have to have a label. We like to label things as humans, which is sometimes annoying because then, people have definitions of those labels and then they argue about them. But yeah, Robert says, Ohio, isn't that cold in the winter? Tom says, I had an experience being in a waiting room. I sat next to a woman and I felt energy being pulled from me to her. Reminded me of psychic vampirism. Yeah. Robert says, yes, I agree, Tanya. Not a singular God. Yep, same here. And Mr. AJ says, Tanya, perhaps a spiritualist? That's not a bad term. Rowan says, I believe we are from the West Meath area. Carla says, I watched a podcast on YouTube about psychic abilities with autistic kids and their mothers. Awesome. Robert says, good, Rowan. North Code says, another great book, Physics of the Impossible by Mikio Kaku. Tom says, then my dad had the same experience, but from sitting next to me. I was in a very bad state, so I think it had to do with the consuming nature of my mood. Yeah, you got to be careful of that. Family can be very influenced by us. Robert says, oops, a spiritual being right now beside me. Weird, it's a lion. Oh my God, oops. Oh, Robert. Robin says, Robert, kind of cold. Not as cold as Canada, usually. Depends on what part of Canada. Some places in Canada are a lot warmer than most places in the States. And Carla says, they were able to do imaging to link the science. Robert says, first time it happens to me. Well, it's always a first time for everything. Debbie says, do y'all think the experience of aliens is connected to fairies? No, I do not. I think they're completely separate and different things. And the fairies would agree with me. But some people think that they are connected. In my experience, no, they're not. The fairies care about the planet, the aliens do not. At least not the ones I've experienced. So, Jen says, my ancestors are from Spain, Asturias, and the Canary Islands. Aha! Private says, yes, confirmed. It's a lion. I saw it fading. Fade, but 100% there. Debbie says, good to know your perspective. Yeah, well, we all have a different perspective. Tom says, it had even a physical effect when experiencing this energy pull. I was gasping for air while it was happening. Well, it sounds like boundaries are important and grounding, having shielding and so forth so that other people, so your energy's not leaking into other people's spheres and stuff like that. The family often is connected on a psychic level that just goes right through the blood. So.
Blood, the dwelling place of the Akasha.
Yes. Virgo Flower says, dear Ian and Siofra, what is the channel perspective about temporary possession from an esoteric point of view, far from being scientific? I don't think I've ever actually met someone who was actually possessed temporarily or otherwise, but I have heard that some people have gotten pretty much, okay, let's see, how do we word this? I was once sort of possessed by the past life personality being from Egypt. So that was sort of a possession. Possession is kind of like channeling. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I think it depends on whether you're a willing participant or not, and if it's a negative spirit being. I had something try to possess me once, and I kicked it out and made it go away. You do have ultimate say as to whether or not a spirit is allowed in your body.
That's kind of what mediums do, that kind of medium. It's not recommended. Considered kind of bad for their health.
So Beth says, guys, another awesome live. I must go. Peace and love to all. Blessed be. Bye, Beth. Robert says, Siofra, what is the symbol of the lion? What life lesson on it? Well, depending on, the lion is strength, protection. There's the Fu lion from China, which is a guardian. I would think that those would probably be the most common associations with the lion.
Kabbalistic.
Solar related, Kabbalistically speaking, okay. Tom says, what rituals do you guys recommend to do for getting over intrusive thoughts? Well, let's see. Silence meditation. A stone, something you can put in your pocket that if you have an intrusive thought, you can bring it into an object. Can be helpful, I think.
I'm going to recommend something a little bit different, which I found is good. If a little bit off this exact subject, but Tai Chi. If you're following the principles of Tai Chi, you should be paying absolute attention to every movement you make, and you shouldn't be thinking about anything else. So making the very slow movements of Tai Chi and focusing on getting them right and getting your foot movements right and your arm movements right and doing them slowly, being totally aware of everything yourself while you do it, that's one of the things that can really help distract you from those invasive thoughts, because by doing that, by being in the present at this very instant and doing the slow movements and paying a lot of attention to them, it like cuts that connection, and then it gives you kind of a break you can use to recover from being under the influence of those thoughts and things so directly. I find it's a good practice for myself.
It's definitely a practice for mindfulness.
Yeah.
And mindfulness meditations and stuff would definitely help. Being in your body and being in the moment and being aware of what's doing, whatever the activity might be. Of course, the Tai Chi is good for moving the energy through your body and for healing and stuff like that. But Mr. AJ says, heard some wild tales of fairies in the Himalayas. They are pretty active there. Cool. Tanya says, you are absolutely right. Labels are problematic. It's hard to explain complex concepts in a single word. I suppose I say atheist to state I don't connect to monotheistic religions. Yeah, I don't either. I've actually started calling myself a, what am I calling myself? A universalist. I guess that's it.
Eclectic
Universalist. A universalist eclectic. So, because everyone was having labels, and I thought I should have one. Because I tried to find a label that didn't have much of a definition, so they couldn't use it against me. Barbara says, it makes sense, Siofra. Thanks.
Yeah, and on the subject of monotheistic religions and things, one must keep in mind the idea of immanence, whereas there is one God throughout all things, but not a God in the Christian definition where it's an individual being who will blast you with thunderbolts, but the idea of God as immanent through all things, and then all aspects, such as you could take Apollo or you could take Isis or any of the other gods or goddesses and look at them as partial aspects of the one God. So that way you've got all kinds of shades of gods that you can access and work with and not have any qualms about it moralistically and things. Yeah, you have to worship this God because this one God. So it's almost like being a monotheistic polytheist or something.
Well, yeah, and immanence is also one of the things that they use to describe nature religion, in that everything in existence is sacred and is imbued with the presence of divine energy, deity, whatever you want to call it. And so
and then if you want to work with Zeus or Anubis or Bast or whoever, you can
one of the things I like about the polytheistic aspects, because you can find an entity that's more specifically suited to whatever your current needs happen to be.
Yeah, it's like the use of a sledgehammer versus a scalpel. Much better if you can target exactly what you're going to do, in my opinion, rather than using the one God sledgehammer for everything. Boom.
Carla says, that made me picture Whoopi Goldberg and Ghost. Bevy Bard says, I have no experience with aliens, but I have felt beings I cannot see around me in nature. I'm just so curious and trying to temper that with daily practice. I've started calling myself an all-theist. That's not a bad term either. Carla says, free-wheeling pagan. Tanya says, eclectic. Ooh, I love that. Robert says, Siofra, would you agree that asking ourselves too many questions can put our brain on fire? I mean, about those questions that we'll never have, for now, any answers? Yeah, and I was just talking about this before the show started. It's like we need to get ourselves to the point where we're okay with not knowing the answer to every question we have. It's okay not to know something.
In fact, it's actually spiritually developing. If you look at some of the Zen systems, they use that. They use a question you cannot answer to make you pierce beyond the veil of the mind. The mind is not a stopping place. It's maybe a starting place. There's so much more out there than the mind. To transcend the mind is to become enlightened. Sorry, I was going someplace else with that, but it just left my mind.
Okay, then.
So
we will accept that. The answers to all questions are not necessary.
Well, yeah. Well, and in the end, yeah. Sorry, I had something there, but it's just gone now.
It's okay not to know everything. That means you're more in the moment anyway.
That's my lack of sleep right at the moment.
Yes, I know you didn't get much sleep last night. North Code says science meets consciousness. Max Planck's universal mind consciousness as the matrix of reality. Von Willett says, I agree on Ian. Polytheism works in a monotheistic system. Teresa says, animist is another. Yes, it is. Debbie the Bard.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, he remembered.
Sorry. I was going to say that Zen proposes questions that you can't answer. And this is a purpose to transcend the mind, because one of the questions Zen asks is, what is mu, M-U? And that's it. They don't tell you anything else. You have to figure out what mu is. Or they say things like, what was the face of your parents before they were born? And these things, the idea is these things don't have a logical solution that you can comprehend with your mind. You have to pierce to the answer without using your brain. It's a method to get you to transcend the mind. So working on problems like that can even be spiritually developing, the ones that you can't solve. And there will always be things that you can't figure out, and you can't let it defeat you. You have to decide, you just have to continue. Sorry, I don't know why that left my brain there for a moment.
That's okay. So Bevy says, has anyone listened to the Emerald podcast? It's a lovely exploration into mythic topics. Not me. Robert says, courage, calm. Brianna says, sense to humans. Brianna says, that's why some beings look like bugs or alligators or cats with human bodies. Max says, at. Welcome, Max. Virgo says, sun. Brianna says, I just don't know what every being is, so I just accepted we're all from the same unified field and there's a lot of variety. Well, yeah, look at how many different kinds of birds there are, There's a lot of variety out there. I love watching the birds shows sometimes just to see the amazing colors and shapes and their dances or something else. North Code says The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, also another good read in science consciousness. Mr. AJ says anything that proclaims to be the only one worth worshiping, a big red flag. Absolutely.
I agree. Yeah,
huge
absolutely.
Red flag. Anybody who says that they know the answer to everything is got a problem. And if they're the only one that's worth paying attention to, there's another big problem. There's so many red flags out there. Norse Code says, I'll check it out at Bebe. Max says, have you ever seen something while scrying? Yeah, plenty of things. I once freaked out when I was using my original crystal ball, which is actually a glass sphere, when I was up in the Kispiox, and a neighbor asked me to look in it to see what I saw, and I was looking in it, and I basically described the view from her window from her childhood. And I described the tree that was in her backyard and stuff, and she didn't care for that. She didn't like it. Oh, okay. So we've got the Northern Lights going on right now, like crazy. You know, there's been X flares constantly, and it's an interesting thing because I remember the Northern Lights pretty well from living up north, and I really like them a lot. And I was very, very annoyed the other night because I knew they were out and I couldn't see them because it was all foggy here and there was no way. And then I started seeing them in my mind. I started seeing them in front of my mind. It's hard to describe, but I actually see the colors. And then I realized I had gone out of my body to go see them in person because I was so annoyed that I had missed them again. So, you know, I do that kind of stuff all the time. And so travel, mental plane travel is something I've been doing ever since I was little. Always interesting. But I was thinking about the whole solar energy kind of thing and how that idea that everyone's affected by solar flares and so forth all over the planet is absurd and ridiculous because you are definitely affected by it if you are there in person because I can hear them. I can hear the sound of them, which is not something everyone can. I can feel them when they're coming because I feel the energy shift and so forth. So when you're there where they're happening, you definitely are affected. But if you're on the other side of the planet or in a lower altitude where they aren't there, there would be no reason for your physical body to actually be impacted by the energy field. And people get really generalized by all this stuff. And they look to it for excuses for their behavior and for whatever their health things are, and they just like lump them all together. Drives me crazy. But anyway, yeah. So, um, Max Robert says, I have read it. I also read Moon Matrix by David Icke. Tom says, have you guys had astral projection experiences? I think I was talking about that. So yes, I've had both astral and mental travel experience. And astral travel is a little more dangerous, but mental travel is a lot easier on you. Robert says, me once only while watching. Margay says, what is the best exercise to astral travel at will? Oh, I don't know. Because in staying grounded is very important. So until you actually are good at shielding, grounding, centering, and being in control of your own thoughts and everything else, I don't recommend trying to astral travel on a regular basis or even mental travel. But I would recommend mental travel over astral travel any day. Carla says, I heard them, they hummed. Yeah, they used to think that people who said they heard them were wrong, that they didn't, because they couldn't make a sound, but now they know that they actually do make a sound, and they sound like static rubbing to me, like a shh, shh, shh kind of sound. At least that's how I hear them. And other animals experience them and see them when they're happening. Like coyotes, that was pretty cool. They would start reacting to the coming of the storm before we could see it visually. They would start yipping and getting all excited, and then the colors would start to be in our visible spectrum, and then they would sing through the whole thing, and then stop singing, and then just before they ended, and then they would start to fade. So it's pretty clear that they were both hearing and seeing in a different spectrum than we were. It was pretty cool. Ben says, I've never seen the Northern Lights, but I've always wanted to. I highly recommend it if you can get a chance. Ron says, I went out of body once, ended up with my back on the ceiling looking down at myself. It was not intentional. Teresa says, is Fox News a YouTube no-no? I think so. I don't know that you can trust most of what you hear from that particular station. I've seen a lot of fake news coming out of the quote-unquote reality there. Camelot says, I once shot out of the top of my head in a formless state and bounced off my bookshelf, then snapped back into my body. That sounds highly unpleasant. Virgo Flower says, your live speaks for and it means healing itself. Writing, reading every line, allowing hearts to ask and learn from that means attention, care, and love. I'm going for a pipe. Bye. Bye, Virgo. Carla says, I didn't get to see them this time around. Yeah. There'll probably be more, considering. Norse Code says, I'll check it out at Robert. I'm only vaguely familiar with Ickle. Or Ick, excuse me. Icky? I don't know how to say his name. So we are actually come to the end of our show. I can't believe it's been an hour and a half already. Robert says, damn, 2 to 3 lions now? Yeah. WTF. Well, I guess you need to go and pay attention to them because maybe they have something to tell you. We're gonna have to go. Yeah. Roman says, I remember slamming back into my body. Not fun. Not interested. So, guys, this has been quite delightful. You really kept us going. We barely caught up in time to go bye-bye. Robert says, for sure, I will be busy. Tom says, also had an experience where I saw my astral hand and heard a voice saying, what are you doing? Teresa says, did you not see my previous message mentioning F News? Yes, I did, and I mentioned it. I'm sorry you didn't hear my response. Carla says, much love, Siofra and Ian. Bye, all. Bye, guys. We'll talk to you all later.
Everyone.
Blessed be everybody. Oh, Mr. AJ says it was the first live I attended. Bye and take care. We'll see you again, we hope. Everybody have a great time.